What's up, everyone, and welcome to this week's Cybersecurity Weekly, where we review the security events that happened in the last week. As always, I've broken the stories down in the timeline, and there is a list of the stories with the time markers in the description below. So you can click on any of those time markers to just jump around to any story you want. If you find my work valuable, of course, I ask you to hit the like button and share this episode with anyone you know who can benefit from this information. And if you have not already, please consider subscribing to my channel.
Oh, drat these computers. They're so naughty and so complex. I could pinch them.
We start off today with patches. Zero Patch released an unofficial security patch for a new Windows 0-day vulnerability in the Microsoft Support Diagnostic tool dubbed DogWalk. The issue impacts all Windows versions starting from Windows 7 and Windows Server 2008, including the latest releases. The flaw is a path traversal flaw that can be exploited to save any files to any locations on the file system, in line with the permissions of the current user before the integrity of the package is checked. An attacker could achieve code execution by dropping a file to the startup folder of Windows, which will be executed by the operating system next time when the user logs in. The DogWalk flaw was first disclosed in January 2020 by security researchers Imre Rad, but Microsoft pushed back the issue, addressing the flaw in the current version of Windows. The expert warned to pay special attention to not open a .diacab file and add this extension to the blacklists of mail server operators. During my testing, I concluded that neither Gmail nor Outlook Live blocked .diagcab files at all, so users of these services could be potential targets. I encountered the filtering mechanism of some MS Exchange-based corporate servers blocking my attachments. However, by linking to a WebDAV share, I could circumvent this protection to the diagcab file could be executed in Outlook, wrote Rad. But not even links like this can be used. Ultimately, they are deactivated by providers like Gmail or Outlook Live and blocked by other security measures of Internet Explorer. The vulnerability lies in the Microsoft Diagnostic Tools sdiag-eng.dll library, which takes the attacker-supplied folder path from the package configuration XML file inside the diagcab archive and copies all files from that folder to a local temporary folder, reads the post published by Zero Patch. During this process, it enumerates files in the attacker's folder, gets the file name for each of them, then glues together the local temporary path and that file name to generate the local path on the computer where the file is to be created. Okay, but of course, who would download and open a silly diagcab file? Well, the download can happen automatically in a drive-by download fashion, as demonstrated by Imre's proof of concept. Now then, you see it listed in the browser's downloads list, and if you click on it, intentionally or unintentionally, it's game over, concludes Zero Patch. How about Mark of Web? Aren't all download files and files received via email marked with this flag that tells Windows to warn the user if they want to open it? They are indeed, and the download diagcab file is marked as well. But it is up to the application processing the file to check this mark and warn the user. Many applications do that. MSDT, unfortunately, does not. We now move on to attacks, vulnerabilities, and updates. It's been detected that an operating system command injection, which has been identified from NIST as a critical one, is scored with 9.8 on the CVS score. This vulnerability comes from a failure to check the parameters sent as inputs into the system before they are processed by the server. Now, this affects Gemini Net. Due to the lack of user input validation, an attacker can ignore the syntax provided by the software and inject arbitrary system commands with the user privileges of the application. Resi SBA has been for over 30 years a technological partner of the largest Italian organizations such as the Ministry of Defense, the Presidency of the Council of Ministers, the Italian Post Office, Leonardo, Ferrovie del Stato, Tim, Italtel. Plus, Resi SBA is one of the few Italian companies that creates national technology. Please note that patches for these specific vulnerabilities have been released by Resi. So Gemini Net is a Resi product that allows active and passive monitoring of networks and communication services used in many networks, both old and new generation. Now, this platform is the OSS system that can be integrated, modular, and scalable. It monitors in real time all the needs related to typical network services and infrastructure issues and is able to optimize resources and data traffic on the network. According to the institutional website, once these vulnerabilities were identified, researchers Alessandro Bosco, Fabio Romano, and Stefano Scipioni immediately started the process of coordinated vulnerability disclosure, with Massimiliano Broli leading the project by publishing only after the availability of fixes made by the vendor. So an alleged nation-state actor is attempting to exploit the recently disclosed Microsoft Office Follina vulnerability in attacks aimed at government entities in Europe and the US. On May 31st, Microsoft released workarounds for a recently discovered zero-day vulnerability dubbed Follina and tracked a CVE 2022-30190 with a CVSS score of 7.8, and it's in the Microsoft Office Productivity Suite. The popular cybersecurity expert Kevin Beaumont, who named the bug Follina, published an analysis of the flaw. The issue affects multiple Microsoft Office versions, including Office 2016, Office 2021. Last week, the cybersecurity researcher Neosec discovered a malicious Word document 05-2022-0438.doc that was uploaded to VirusTotal from Belarus. The document uses the remote template feature to fetch an HTML and then uses the MSDT scheme to execute PowerShell code. Researchers from Proofpoint reported that China-linked TA413 app group is conducting a spear phishing campaign that uses zip archives containing weaponized Word documents. The attackers impersonate the Woman Empowerment Desk of the Central Tibetan Administration and use the domain tibet.gov.web.app for the attacks. Proofpoint announced via tweet to have blocked a phishing campaign launched by an alleged nation-state actor. The attacks targeted less than 10 Proofpoint customers, European government and local U.S. government, with exploits for the Follina vulnerability. These phishing messages masqueraded as a salary increase and utilized an RTF with the exploit payload. The payload is a PowerShell script that is base64 encoded and acts as a downloader to retrieve a second stage PowerShell script from a remote server named seller-notification.live. Now, the script performs some checks to avoid running in virtualization environment. It is able to steal information from local browsers, mail clients, and file services. It is also able to perform reconnaissance. Gathered data are exfiltrated in the form of zip archives to some IP address. The attribution to a nation-state actor is based on both the extensive recon of the PowerShell and tight concentration of targeting. Microsoft Digital Crimes Unit, or DCU, announced to have taken legal action to disrupt the spear phishing operation linked to Iran-linked Bohrium. The IT giant has seized the domains used by the threat actors employed in its attacks aimed at organizations in tech, transportation, government, and education sectors located in the US, Middle East, and India. Microsoft seized 41 websites, including .com, .info, .live, .me, .net, .org, and .xyz, domains that were employed in the attacks. The app group created fake social media profiles, often posing as recruiters, then use them to trick targets into providing personal information. Once the information from the victims is obtained, Bohrium sent phishing emails to the victims containing links that, once clicked, have started the infection process for the target's computers. The threat actors' spear phishing attacks were aimed at gathering intelligence over the targets. Earlier this past month, Microsoft announced it has blocked a series of attacks targeting Israeli organizations that have been conducted by a previously unknown Lebanon-based hacking group tracked as Polonium. Polonium has targeted or compromised more than 20 Israeli organizations and one intergovernmental organization with operations in Lebanon over the past 3 months. Since February, the attacks targeted organizations in critical manufacturing, IT, and Israel's defense industry. The LockBit Ransomware gang has added the cybersecurity firm Mandiant to the list of victims published on its dark web leak site. Mandiant is investigating the claims of the ransomware gang. The cybercrime group declared to have stolen 356,841 files from the company and plans to delete them online. The gang plans to release the stolen files on the 6th of June, or planned to, 2022 at 11:35 p.m. The alleged stolen documents appear to have included in an archive named mandiantyellowpress.com, that's 7Z. At this time, the domain mandiantyellowpress.com redirects users to the site ninjaflex.com that displays the images of a ninja and a flex. Earlier this month, Mandiant published a report claiming that the cybercrime gang Evil Corp switched to LockBit 2.0 ransomware to evade sanctions. A Mandiant statement published by several websites states that the company was aware of the claims, but at this point, we do not have any evidence to support their claims. We'll continue to monitor the situation as it develops. So researchers from NCC Group spotted a new partnership in the threat landscape between the Black Basta ransomware group and the QBot malware operation. Black Basta has been active since April 2022. Like other ransomware operations, implements a double extortion attack model. QBot, aka CACBot, or Pink Slip bot has been active since 2008. It is used by threat actors for collecting browser data and banking credentials and other financial information from the victims. Its modular structure allows operators to implement new features to extend their capabilities. The QBot malware operation had numerous collaborations in the past with other ransomware gangs, including Prolock, eGregor, Doppelpaymer, and Mega Cortex. NCC Group researchers discovered the new partnership while investigating a recent incident. Unlike past collaborations, Black Basta gang is using QBot to spread laterally throughout the target network. Black Basta was observed using the following methods to laterally move throughout the network after their initial access had been gained, reads the analysis published by NCC. First, execute.exe, which was created in the C Windows folder. CakeBot was leveraged to remotely create a temporary service on a target host, which was configured to execute a CakeBot DLL using regserver32.exe. RDP, along with the deployment of a batch file called rdp.bat, which contained command lines to enable RDP logons. This was used to allow the threat actor to establish remote desktop sessions on compromised hosts, even if RDP was disabled originally. Then there was a registry add for HKLM, a bunch of fdeny TS connections, the regword, netstart MPS service, and that's all to start remote desktop and enable connections. Experts report that the threat actor used two main techniques to evade antivirus detection by disabling Windows Defender. The first technique leverages the batch script d.bat, which was deployed locally on the compromised host and executed a series of PowerShell commands. The second technique involved creating a GPO, group policy object, on a compromised domain controller, which would push out a series of changes to the Windows registry of the domain joined hosts. The threat actors used CakeBot to maintain persistence on the victim's network. Experts also observed the use of Cobalt strike beacons during the compromise. The attackers, prior to the deployment of the ransomware, established RDP sessions to Hyper-V servers to modify configurations for the VM backup jobs and deleted the backups of the virtual machines used by the victims. Then the attackers run a script to deliver the ransomware binary to the IP addresses contained within the Windows PC_list.txt file. The researchers shared technical details about the ransomware along with the indicators of compromise. Mandiant researchers have investigated multiple LockBit ransomware attacks that have been attributed to the financially motivated threat actor UNC2165. The researchers also noticed that the group shares numerous overlaps with the cybercrime gang Evil Corp. The UNC2165 group has been active since at least 2019. It was mainly observed using fake updates infection chain, aka UNC1543, to access the victims' networks. Experts noticed that fake updates was also used as the initial infection vector for Dridix infections that were used to deploy Bitpaymer or Doppelpaymer in the last stage of the attack. Previously, the UNC2165 actors also deployed the Hades ransomware. Based on the overlaps between UNC2165 and Evil Corp, we assess with high confidence that these actors have shifted away from using exclusive ransomware variants to LockBit, a well-known ransomware as a service in their operations, likely to hinder attribution of efforts in order to evade sanctions, reads the analysis published by Mandiant. Evil Corp has likely started using LockBit ransomware in an attempt to elude sanctions imposed by the U.S. Treasury in December 2019. The researchers also noticed UNC2165 overlaps with a cluster of activity tracked as Silverfish by security firm ProDraft. The data reported in ProDraft's report confirms that the analyzed malware administration panel was used to manage fake updates, infections, and to distribute secondary payloads, including Beacon. Mandiant attributed this activity to UNC2165 based on malware payloads and other technical artifacts discovered by ProDraft. The analysis published by Mandiant provided details about each phase of the attack lifecycle associated with the threat actors. Once initial access is gained to the target network, the attackers conducted a series of actions such as privilege escalation, internal reconnaissance, lateral movements, and maintaining persistence, aiming at deploying the final ransomware. The adoption of an existing ransomware is a natural evolution for UNC2165 to attempt to obscure their affiliation with Evil Corp. Both the prominence of LockBit in recent years and its successful use by several different threat clusters likely made the ransomware an attractive choice. Using this ransomware as a service would allow UNC2165 to blend in with other affiliates, requiring visibility into earlier stages of the attack lifecycle to properly attribute the activity, compared to prior operations that may have been attributable based on the use of an exclusive ransomware, concludes the report. It is plausible that the actors behind UNC2165 operations will continue to take additional steps to distance themselves from Evil Corp names. Back to Black Basta. Black Basta ransomware gang now supports encryption of VMware ESXi virtual machines running on Linux servers. Researchers from Uptycs first reported the discovery of the new Black Basta ransomware variant that supports encryption of VMware ESXi servers. The move aims at expanding potential targets. The support for VMware ESXi has already implemented or was already implemented by many ransomware families, including LockBit, Hello Kitty, Black Matter, and REvil. Black Basta has been active since April 2022. Like other ransomware operations, it implements a double extortion attack model. The ransomware will append the .basta extension to the encrypted files and create ransom notes named readme.txt in each folder. US DOJ announced the seizure of the SSNDOB marketplace, a series of websites offering personal information, including the names, dates of birth, and social security numbers belonging to individuals in the United States. According to authorities, the SSNDOB marketplace has listed the personal information for approximately 24 million individuals in the United States, generating more than $19 million in sales. The international operation was conducted by the FBI, the Internal Revenue Service, and the Department of Justice, along with the Cyprus Police. On June 7, 2022, seizure orders allowed to seize 4 domains used by the operators of the SSNDOB marketplace, the SSNDOB.ws, .vip, .club, and blackjob.biz, shutting down the website's operations. Blockchain analysis firm Chainalysis published an interesting report on the SSNDOB's cryptocurrency transaction history, revealing connections to the popular Joker Stash carding website. The experts report that the SSNDOB's Bitcoin payment processing system has been active since April 2015. Since then, the service has received nearly $22 million worth of Bitcoin across over 100,000 transactions. The average transaction was roughly $220, but experts noticed that some large transfers that reach as much as $200,000 worth of Bitcoin had passed. Most funds sent to SSNDOB have come from centralized and P2P cryptocurrency exchanges as well as other services. Interestingly, roughly 10% of the funds sent to SSNDOB have come from cryptocurrency ATMs, a higher proportion than we typically see for most services, including darknet markets and other illicit providers, according to Chainalysis. Between December 2018 and June 2019, SSNDOB sent over $100,000 worth of Bitcoin to Joker's Stash, suggesting the two markets may have had some relationship to one another, including possibly shared ownership. The seizure is another important blow to the illegal activities online. Researchers from Avast have uncovered a malware campaign tracked as fake crack, spreading through the search results for a pirated copy of the CCleaner Pro Windows optimization program. The researchers pointed out that operators behind the campaign used a large infrastructure to deliver an info-stealing malware and harvest sensitive data, including crypto assets from the victims. Avast revealed to have prevented the infection of roughly 10,000 users daily, most of them located in Brazil, India, Indonesia, and France. The links provided by the Google queries point to a zip archive encrypted with a weak password such as 1234 that contains a single executable file, i.e. setup.exe or cracksetup.exe. The landing page has different visual forms. All of them offer a link to a legitimate file share platform which contains a malware zip file. The file sharing services abused in this campaign include, for example, the Japanese file sharing filesend.jp or mediafire.com, reads the analysis published by Avast. The experts analyzed 8 executables, all of them with info stealing capabilities. The malicious code harvests sensitive info from the PC, including passwords or credit card data from the browser and wallet's credentials. Then the data are uploaded to the command and control server in encrypted zip format. The researchers noticed that the zip file encryption key is hard-coded into the binary, which means that it could be easy to access. The info-stealing malware also uses proxies to steal credentials and other sensitive data from some crypto marketplaces. Threat actors set up an IP address to download a malicious proxy auto-configuration script, then set up this IP address in the system, and every time the victim accesses one of the listed domains, the traffic is redirected to the proxy server. With this trick, the attackers are able to carry out man-in-the-middle attacks. This type of attack is quite unusual in the context of the crypto stealing activity. However, it is very easy to hide it from the user, and the attacker can observe the victim's traffic at given domains for quite a long time without being noticed. In order to remove proxy settings, users have to manually perform the following actions. Remove auto-config URL registry key in this registry key location, or the settings. Alternatively, using the GUI, click on the start menu, type settings and hit enter, go to network and internet, proxy, delete script address, and click on the save button. Disable the use a proxy server option. That's if you have infected or if somebody has installed a proxy for you that you do not want to use. Proofpoint researchers reported a new wave of Emotet infections. In particular, a new variant is using a new info-stealing module used to siphon credit card information stored in the Chrome browser. Once the card data were gathered, the module exfiltrates it to a command and control server that are different from the loader module. The Emotet banking Trojan has been active since at least 2014. The botnet is operated by threat actor tracked as TA542. The infamous banking Trojan was also used to deliver other malicious code such as the TrickBot and QBot Trojans, or ransomware such as Conti, Prolock, Ryuk, and eGregor. In April, the operators of the infamous Emotet botnet started testing new attack techniques in response to Microsoft's move to disable Visual Basic for applications and macros by default. The operators used the new technique in a low-volume Emotet campaign spotted by Proofpoint that leveraged a compromised sender's account, and the emails were not sent to by the Emotet spam module. The campaign was observed between April 4th, 2022 and April 19th, 2022. The messages used simple words as subject as a salary. The messages include OneDrive URLs pointing to zip files containing Microsoft Excel add-in files. The zip archives and XLL files used the same lures as the email subject, such as salary_new.zip. This particular archive contained 4 copies of the same XLL file with names such as salary and bonuses. The XLL files, when executed, drop and run Emotet leveraging the Epoch 4 botnet. The execution of the Microsoft Excel add-in files in the zip archives allows to drop and run the Emotet payload. Researchers from Kaspersky reported that malicious spam campaigns spreading QBot and Emotet malware and targeting organizations grew tenfold between February and March. Kaspersky has unveiled a significant spike in activity from a malicious spam email campaign which spreads the dangerous malware Emotet and QBot and targets corporate users. The number of such malicious emails grew from around 3,000 in February 2022 to approximately 30,000 in March. The campaign is likely connected to the increasing activity of the Emotet botnet, states Kaspersky. Most of the mole spam messages were written in English, French, Hungarian, Italian, Norwegian, Polish, Russian, Slovenian, and Spanish languages. Researchers from Kroll reported that since April 22nd, 2022, the Emotet operators have introduced some changes to the delivery mechanism of the loader. The experts also observed threat actors exploring new ways of delivering malware to victims, such as using the ISO containers to remote MOTW from documents or to bypass inline email defenses, which has notably been used by the Iced ID malware. They also continued the use of password-protected zip attachments, as these are typically unable to be inspected by inline email security tooling. SentinelOne documented a series of attacks aimed at government, education, and telecom entities in Southeast Asia and Australia, carried out by a previously undocumented Chinese-speaking app tracked as Aoqin Dragon. The app primarily focuses on cyber espionage against targets in Australia, Cambodia, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Vietnam. The group has been active since at least 2013. The Aoqin Dragon was observed seeking initial access primarily through document exploits and the use of fake removable devices. Other techniques employed by the app group include DLL hijacking, thematic packed files, and DNS tunneling to evade post-compromise detection. The researchers pointed out that the infection chain and TTPs associated with the group evolved over the years. They divide the infection strategy into 3 parts: using a document exploit and tricking the user into opening a weaponized Word document to install a backdoor. They also lured users into double-clicking a fake antivirus to execute malware in the victim's host, and they forged a fake removable device to lure users into opening the wrong folder and installing the malware successfully on their system. Most of the bait documents are themed around targets who are interested in APAC political affairs, but threat actors also used lure documents themed pornographic topics. SentinelOne reported that Aoqin Dragon used distinct backdoors, the first one dubbed Mongal, while the second one is a modified version of the open source Heyoka project. The threat actors are using the Mongal backdoor since at least 2013. It is not a sophisticated implant, but includes features to create a remote shell and upload and download arbitrary files. Joint research conducted by security firms Intezer and BlackBerry uncovered a new Linux threat dubbed Symbiote. The name comes from the concept of symbiote, which is an organism that lives in symbiosis with another organism, exactly like this implant does with the infected systems. For this reason, security researchers defined this threat as nearly impossible to detect. Unlike other Linux threats, Symbiote needs to infect other running processes to inflict damage on the compromised machine. It is a shared object library that is loaded into all running processes using LD_preload And like a parasite, it infects the machine. Once the malware has infected all the running processes, it provides the threat actor with rootkit capability and supports data stealing capabilities. The malware was first spotted in November 2021. Experts believe it was designed to target the financial sector in Latin America, such as Banco do Brasil and Caixa. Once the malware has infected a machine, it hides itself and any other malware used by the threat actor, making infections very hard to detect. Performing live forensics on an infected machine may not turn anything up since all the file, processes, and network artifacts are hidden by the malware. In addition to the rootkit capability, the malware provides a backdoor for the threat actor to log in as any user on the machine with a hard-coded password, and to execute commands with the highest privileges, reads the report published by BlackBerry. Since it's extremely evasive, a Symbiont infection is likely to fly under the radar. In our research, we haven't found enough evidence to determine whether Symbiont is being used in highly targeted or broad attacks. Experts reported that one interesting technical feature implemented by Symbiont is the Berkeley Packet Filter, BPF, hooking functionality. It's the first Linux malware to use this feature to hide malicious network traffic. When an administrator starts any packet capture tool on the infected machine, BPF bytecode is injected into the kernel that defines which packets should be captured. In this process, Symbiont adds its bytecode first so it can filter out network traffic that it doesn't want the packet capturing software to see, continues the report. Symbiont can be loaded by the linker via the LD_preload directive before any other shared object, allowing to hijack the imports from the other library files loaded for the application. Symbiont hides its presence by hooking libc and libpcap functions. Symbiont is a malware that is highly evasive. Its main objective is to capture credentials and to facilitate backdoor access to infected machines. Since the malware operates as a user load level rootkit, detecting an infection may be difficult, concludes the report. Network telemetry can be used to detect anomalous DNS requests, and security tools such as antivirus and endpoint detection and response should be statically linked to ensure they are not infected by user land rootkits. The Vice Society ransomware group has claimed responsibility for the recent cyber attack that hit the city of Palermo in the south of Italy. In response to the security breach, the IT infrastructure of the city was shut down. The attack took place on June 2nd, and the outage caused severe problems to the citizens. CISPI, or Palermo Innovazione Sisteme, which is the municipal company that is responsible for the technical management of the municipal IT and telematics system of the municipality of Palermo, confirmed the ransomware attack a few days later, but at the time, it doesn't confirm the data breach. The attack impacted the municipal police, surveillance cameras, and ZTL traffic control systems. The authorities confirmed that the problems can last for days. Municipal administration announced that demographic services are guaranteed. While the city of Palermo is still investigating the incident with the help of the local authorities, the ransomware gang Vice Society claimed the responsibility for the attack and added the name of the city to its dark web site. The Vice Society ransomware gang claimed to have stolen data from the city of Palermo and is threatening to publish them by Sunday if the ransom is not paid. At the time, it is not clear which data the ransomware gang has stolen. Vice Society has yet to publish any sample of this data. Vice Society ransomware has been active since at least 2021. It is considered by researchers a spin-off of the Hello Kitty ransomware. The malware targets both Windows and Linux systems, primarily belonging to small or mid-sized victims. This group focuses on public school districts and other educational institutions. Like other ransomware gangs, it does implement double extortion model and publishes data stolen from the victims on a data leak site. Threatening the victim with the publication of data is standard practice for ransomware groups today. Called the double extortion tactic, and can be a powerful way to extort victims. Vice Society might hold the personally identifiable information of Palermo's residents and the sensitive details of anyone who has used the municipality's digital services. The ransomware gang used to compromise target networks by exploiting known vulnerabilities. In August 2021, researchers from Talos observed the group exploiting Windows Print Spooler and Print Nightmare exploits in its attacks. The investigation into the ransomware attack against the city of Palermo is still ongoing, and at this time, the municipality of CISPI haven't shared details about the attack. Cuba Ransomware has been active since at least January 2020. Its operators have a data leak site where they post exfiltrated data from their victims who refuse to pay the ransom. The ransomware encrypts files on the targeted systems using the .cuba extension. Cuba Ransomware has been actively distributed through the Hansiter malware, a commodity malware that partnered with ransomware gangs to help them gain initial access to target networks. The Hansiter downloader has been active since at least 2016 for dropping Pony and Vowtrack. A flash alert published by the FBI in December 2021 reported that the Cuba Ransomware gang breached the networks of at least 49 U.S. critical infrastructure organizations. Researchers from Trend Micro have reported a surge in Cuba Ransomware gang activity in March and April 2022. The experts reported the use of a new variant in recent attacks. The samples employed in March and April used the Bughatch custom downloader. The new variant is able to terminate a large number of processes and services to prevent that applications could lock them and interfere with the encryption process. Another change in the new variant is related to the expansion of the safe-listed directories and file extensions that are not encrypted by the ransomware to preserve the operation of the infected machine. Another change in the variant used in recent attacks is the addition of QTalks to the ransomware note, a communication channel to provide technical support to the victims to facilitate ransom payment negotiation. We're still investigating the latest set of samples and have yet to establish the entire infection chain for the new Cuba ransomware variant. As mentioned, the indicators that were commonly seen in most of the recent infections were not present in the latest samples we saw, concludes the report. Moreover, our detections of new samples in May suggest that Cuba ransomware's attacks will persist in the coming months, possibly with more updates to the malware that are par for the course. Checkpoint researchers have observed threat actors exploiting the recently disclosed CVE-2022-26134 remote code execution vulnerability in Atlassian Confluence servers to deploy cryptocurrency miners. Last week, Atlassian warned of a critical unpatched remote code execution vulnerability affecting all Confluence server and data center supported versions tracked to CVE-2022-26134 that is being actively exploited in attacks in the wild. Atlassian has been made aware of current active exploitation of a critical severity unauthenticated remote code execution vulnerability in Confluence data center and server. Further details about the vulnerability are being withheld until a fix is available, reads the advisory published by the company. The issue was reported by security firm Volexity, CVE 2022-26134, and in the same week of its disclosure, Atlassian addressed the flaw in Confluence server and data center products. Multiple proof-of-concept exploits for the CVE 2022-26134 flaw have been released online. Checkpoint researchers observed a lot of exploitation attempts after the disclosure of the RCE. Some of the malicious payloads employed in the attacks were used as part of the same campaign conducted by the same threat actor tracked by the security firm as 8220 gang. The attacks were aimed at both Linux and Windows operating systems using different infection chains. In attacks against Linux systems, the attackers exploited the flaw by sending a crafted HTTP request to the victim. In attacks against Windows systems, the threat actors exploited the flaw to execute a PowerShell download cradle to initiate a fileless attack from a remote command and control server. In the Linux chain attack, the payload fetches a malware dropper script and achieves persistence via cron jobs. In the Windows attack chain, the checkit2.exe process spawns a child process which connects to the command and control server. In an attempt to spread to other machines, the Linux script searches for SSH keys and attempts to establish a connection. Then it downloads the XMS file from the command and control server and executes it. Both attack scenarios start with an initial crafted HTTP request, exploiting the CVE 2022-26134 vulnerability. The attacker executes commands using the Java execution function to download a malicious payload to the victim's machine. The malicious payload then downloads an executable file according to the affected operating system type. Both executables run a crypto miner to utilize the victim's resources for their own benefit. Pac-Man is a novel hardware attack technique that can allow attackers to bypass pointer authentication on the Apple M1 CPU. The pointer authentication codes, or PACs, allow to detect and guard against unexpected changes to pointers in memory. Pointer authentication implements a special CPU instruction to add a cryptographic signature to unused high-order bits of a pointer before storing the pointer. The signature is removed and authenticated by another instruction after reading the pointer back from memory. Any change to the stored value between the write and the read invalidates the signature, an event that is interpreted as memory corruption and set a high-order bit in the pointer to invalidate the pointer. The researchers who devised the attack technique speculate that the principles behind the Pac-Man attacks could be used for much more than just Pac. The technique was discovered by researchers at MIT's Computer Science and Artificial Intelligence Laboratory, Joseph Ravichandran, Weon Tekna, Jay Lang, and Menjia Yan. We leverage speculative execution attacks to bypass an important memory protection mechanism, ARM pointer authentication, a security feature that is used to enforce pointer integrity. We present Pac-Man, a novel attack methodology that speculatively leaks PAC verification results via micro-architectural side channels without causing any crashes, reads the research paper published by the researchers. Our attack removes the primary barrier to conducting control flow hijacking attacks on a platform protected using pointer authentication. The researchers pointed out that the Pac-Man attack is just an exploitation technique, and it is not enough to compromise the system. Anyway, the bad news is that the hardware mechanisms used by Pac-Man cannot be patched with software updates. The researcher devised a PAC oracle to distinguish between a correct PAC and an incorrect one without causing any system crashes. An attacker can brute force the correct PAC value while suppressing crashes and construct a control flow hijacking attack on a PA-enabled victim program or operating system. The key insight of our Pac-Man attack is to use speculative execution to stealthily leak PAC verification results via microarchitectural side channels. A Pac-Man gadget consists of two operations: a pointer verification operation that speculatively verifies the correctness of a guest PAC, and a transmission operation that speculatively transmits the verification result via a microarchitectural side channel, reads the paper. The pointer verification operation is performed by an authentication instruction, a new instruction in ARM version 8.3, which outputs a valid pointer if the verification succeeds and an invalid pointer otherwise. The researchers shared their findings with Apple. The IT giant downplayed the risks related to the exposure to this side channel attack for Mac users because the technique requires other security vulnerabilities to be effective. I know we've had this kind of response from Apple specifically to the iOS system, but any possible attack, specifically one to a chip that only they use, is a negative for them, from my point of view. Now, we believe that this attack has important implications for designers looking to implement future processors featuring pointer authentication, and has broad implications for the security of future control flow integrity primitives, the researchers concluded, and I agree wholeheartedly with them. The Iran-linked Lyceum app group, aka Hexane or Spillrin, used a new .NET-based DNS backdoor in a campaign aimed at companies in the energy and telecommunications sectors, Zscaler researchers warn. The activity of the Lyceum app group was first documented earlier in August 2019 by researchers at ICS security firm Dragos, which tracked it as Hexane. Dragos reported that Hexane was focused on organizations in the oil and gas industry and telecommunication providers. According to Dragos, the Hexane group has been active since at least the middle of 2018. It intensified its activity in early 2019 with an escalation of tensions within the Middle East. Zscaler Threat Labs researchers recently uncovered a new campaign where the app group was employing a new .NET-based backdoor targeting the Middle East. The DNS backdoor borrows the code from an open-source tool named dig.net. It was used to perform DNS hijacking. The malware leverages a DNS attack technique called DNS hijacking, in which an attacker-controlled DNS server manipulates the response of DNS queries and resolves them as per their malicious requirements, reads the analysis published Zscaler. The malware employs the DNS protocol for command and control communication, which increases stealth and keeps the malware communication probes under the radar to evade detection. The backdoor supports multiple functionalities, including upload, download files, and execution of system commands on the infected machine by abusing DNS records, including TXT records for incoming commands and A records for data exfiltration. The attack chain observed by the researchers starts with spear phishing messages using weaponized Word document disguised as a news report related to military affairs in Iran. DNS hijacking is a redirection attack that relies on DNS query manipulation to take a user who attempts to visit a legitimate site to a malicious clone hosted on a server under the threat actor's control. Upon enabling macros to view the content, the DNS backdoor will be dropped onto the system. When the user closes the document, the attackers leverage the auto-close function to drop the DNS backdoor onto the system. The auto-close function reads a PE file from the text box presented to or on the 7th page of the document. This PE file is dropped into the startup folder to maintain persistence via the macro code. Then upon restarting the system, the DNS backdoor is executed. Researchers from security firm Trellix discovered some critical vulnerabilities in HID Mercury Access Controllers that can be exploited by attackers to remotely unlock doors. The flaws impact products manufactured by Lenel S2, a provider of advanced physical security solutions, i.e. access control, video surveillance, and mobile credentialing, owned by HVAC giant Carrier. The vulnerabilities were disclosed during the Hardware.io security trainings and conference by researchers from Trellix Threat Labs, who analyzed an industrial control system, used to grant physical access to privileged facilities. The experts focused on Carrier's Lenel S2 access control panels, manufactured by HID Mercury. Analysis begins at the lowest level of hardware. By using the manufacturer's built-in ports, we were able to manipulate onboard components and interact with the device. Combining both known and novel techniques, we were able to achieve root access to the device's operating system and pull its firmware for emulation and vulnerability discovery, reads the post published by Trellix. Trellix discovered 8 vulnerabilities, 7 of which have been rated as critical, which can be exploited by a remote attacker to execute arbitrary code to perform command injection, information spoofing, write arbitrary files, and trigger a denial of service condition. Most of these vulnerabilities can be exploited without authentication, but exploitation requires a direct connection to the targeted system. The researchers performed a reverse engineering of the firmware and system binaries, along with live debugging, and discovered the 8 issues. 6 of them are unauthenticated, and 2 authenticated vulnerabilities exploited remotely over the network. By chaining just 2 of the vulnerabilities together, we were able to exploit the access control board and gain root-level privileges on the devices remotely. With this level of access, we created a program that would run alongside the legitimate software and control the doors, continues the post. This allowed us to unlock any door and subvert any system monitoring. The experts also developed a proof-of-concept exploit to unlock any door and hack monitoring systems. Carrier has published a product security advisory to warn customers about the vulnerabilities and urge them to install firmware updates. Multiple ransomware groups are actively exploiting the recently disclosed remote code execution vulnerability tracked to CVE-2022-26134 affecting Atlassian Confluence server and data center. Proof of concept exploits for the CVE-2022-26134 vulnerability have been released online. Bleepy Computer reported that starting from Friday afternoon, a proof of concept exploit for this issue was publicly shared. Researchers from cybersecurity firm Grey Noise reported that 23 unique IP addresses were observed exploiting the Atlassian vulnerabilities. A remote attacker could exploit this OGNL injection vulnerability to take over vulnerable servers, then exploit the remote code execution to implant malware, including ransomware. Researchers from security firm ProDraft first reported that the Avos Locker ransomware operators have already started exploiting the Atlassian Confluence bug. That's according to Bleeping Computer. Researchers noticed that the creation of a Confluence campaign in the control panel of the Avos Locker operation. Bleeping Computer also reported that operators behind Server 2021 ransomware, aka Server Imposter, are actively exploiting the Confluence flow in recent attacks as well. We now move on to other security news. US NSA, CISA, and the FBI published a joint cybersecurity advisory to warn that China-linked threat actors have breached telecommunications companies and network service providers. The nation-state actors exploit publicly known vulnerabilities to compromise the target infrastructure. The attackers also targeted small office, home office, routers, and network-attached storage devices to use them as additional access points to route command and control traffic and midpoints to carry out attacks on other entities. The Chinese attackers, or Chinese hackers, employed open-source tools for reconnaissance and vulnerability scanning. According to the government experts, they have utilized open-source router specification software frameworks, Routersploit and Routerscan, to identify vulnerable devices to target. The Routersploit framework allows operators to scan for vulnerable embedded devices, while Routerscan allows for the scanning of IP addresses for vulnerabilities. Both tools could be used to target SOHO and other routers manufactured by major industry providers including Cisco, Fortinet, and MikroTik. Upon gaining an initial foothold into a telecommunications organization or network service provider, PRC state-sponsored cyber actors have identified critical users and infrastructure, including systems critical to maintaining the security of authentication, authorization, and accounting. After identifying a critical remote authentication dial-in user server, the cyber actors gained credentials to access the underlying structured query language database and utilized SQL commands to dump the credentials, which contain both clear text and hashed passwords for user and administrative accounts. Resi advisory published by the U.S. agencies. Having gained credentials from the Radius server, PRC state-sponsored cyber actors used those credentials with custom automated scripts to authenticate to a router via secure shell, execute router commands, and save the output. With that, I say thanks again for watching. Don't forget to share and subscribe if you haven't already, and smash the bell if you haven't already. And I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.